She thought she could erase me from my own project and impress the execs with my work. I let her build her fantasy, and quietly saved every receipt. When the truth came out, she didn't just lose the spotlight, she lost everything. When I first took the job, I really thought I'd found something solid. The position wasn't glamorous, but it paid fairly well for the hours, and the work seemed simple enough. Assist in project coordination and technical documentation at a mid-sized firm that specialized in digital services for higher education institutions. It was supposed to be a support role, with clear responsibilities, low stress, and decent benefits. After bouncing around unstable jobs post-grad, it felt like I'd finally landed in a place where I could grow. For the first few months, that's exactly what it was. The team was small but efficient, the environment was collaborative, and I had a lot of freedom to work independently. I handled onboarding materials, compiled feedback from trainers, and helped streamline content across several training modules. I wasn't leading the projects, but I was involved enough to make a noticeable difference. Then came the leadership shuffle. A new associate director was brought in, someone external, with a corporate background that didn't quite mesh with the culture we had built. Right from the start, something felt off. She had that polished, rehearsed energy you see in people who are more interested in appearances than outcomes. In meetings, she asked surface-level questions, reworded other people's ideas as if they were her own, and offered vague, strategic advice that didn't really mean anything. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. People need time to adjust. Maybe she just needed to understand our workflows before she'd settle in. But she wasn't interested in understanding. She was interested in control. Within weeks, she started inserting herself into the training module project I had been working on for months. It wasn't even in her direct scope, but that didn't stop her. She began giving orders, editing files without notice, and questioning my contributions in team meetings. When I pushed back, politely mind you, she'd smile and say things like, "I'm just helping refine things from a strategic level." Except her refinements didn't make anything better. She removed crucial context, broke up our learner flow, and insisted on using outdated corporate jargon that we had already stripped out because it tested poorly with users. The work I had built carefully over time was being picked apart by someone who barely understood it. Then it got worse. She started sending project updates to upper management, ones that omitted my name entirely. Tasks I had completed were suddenly being attributed to leadership direction. During one call, she even shared a slide deck I had designed from scratch and presented it like it was her own. That's when I realized what was happening. She was setting me up. Not because she had a problem with me personally, but because she wanted to establish herself quickly, and stepping on the person doing the real work was the fastest way to climb. It wasn't the first time I'd seen it happen in an office, but it was the first time it had happened to me this directly. And I'll be honest, for a little while, I panicked. I started second-guessing my notes. I lost sleep over whether I was being paranoid. But eventually, I shook that off. I knew I was doing good work, and I had the receipts. So I made a decision. If she wanted to try and bury me, I'd let her dig the hole herself. All I had to do was keep everything. After that team meeting where she presented my work as hers, I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated move. She was trying to erase me from the project while using my work to make herself look competent. I didn't react. I didn't confront her. I didn't go to HR or ask for a meeting with management. I just started keeping better records. Every project file, every edit, every piece of feedback, I backed it all up in a private, time-stamped folder. I archived emails, copied version histories, and screen-recorded my contributions during virtual meetings. If she deleted something from our shared drive, I had a copy. If she took credit for something I'd written, I had the drafts, along with the document metadata showing authorship. I even saved chat logs where she asked me to clean up presentations and later presented those cleaned-up versions without mentioning my name. The sad part was that I didn't have to go digging for proof. She was so sloppy, so focused on climbing the ladder quickly, that she left a trail of evidence behind her. She thought no one would ever question her because of her title. But titles don't make you bulletproof. At the same time, I kept playing the part. I stayed polite, professional, and outwardly cooperative. When she asked for revisions, I delivered them. When she scheduled one-on-ones to check in on my progress, I smiled and updated her calmly. All the while, I continued building my digital paper trail. That's when she made her next big mistake. The company had been preparing for a major leadership review, a quarterly progress report where department heads showcased their achievements to the executive team. The training module project I had been working on was a key component. It had gone from a basic concept to a fully interactive onboarding suite, complete with visual modules, scenario-based activities, and a feedback system. I'd put months into refining it, and she saw it as her ticket to the spotlight. About 2 weeks before the review, she scheduled a call with me. She said she needed to align our messaging for the execs. I thought it might finally be a collaborative conversation. Instead, she told me flat out, "You've done some great support work on this, and that's worth recognizing. But I'll be handling the presentation. It'll come from leadership. Let's keep you behind the scenes so it feels more cohesive." I smiled, nodded, and agreed. She didn't know I'd already prepared a fully documented timeline of the project, one that showed every contribution from day one. I'd even drafted my own version of the presentation slides, just in case. I had everything I needed to expose her. But I wasn't going to blow it early. I wanted it to land when it mattered most, when she was standing in front of executives, thinking she'd already won. That opportunity came faster than I expected. The day of the executive review came fast. The associate director, my biggest fan in public, silent eraser in private, was glowing. She had blocked off time on the calendar, reserved a meeting slot labeled Training Module Strategic Lead Update, and even mentioned in Slack how proud she was of her team's progress. She didn't include me in the invite, but one of the senior managers did. I wasn't sure whether it was a mistake or a quiet show of support. Either way, I accepted the invite without making a fuss. I kept my camera off and muted my mic. I just listened. The associate director gave her usual overly polished introduction. She talked about strategic alignment and leveraging cross-functional collaboration. Then she opened a slide deck, my slide deck, just with the title page swapped, and started walking the execs through it like she'd written every word. What she didn't know was that one of the people in that meeting had already seen my version. A week earlier, I had quietly forwarded my original draft to a senior stakeholder who'd asked for background context on the module. I didn't editorialize or complain. I just said, "Here's the source material and contributions for the current onboarding design. Let me know if you need clarification." During the presentation, that same stakeholder, someone not known for mincing words, stopped her mid-sentence. "Can you walk us through the early-stage feedback loop and initial draft development process? Specifically, who coordinated that phase?" She paused. You could almost feel her scrambling for an answer. She tried to dance around it. It was a collaborative team effort, but the strategic vision came together once I stepped into. The stakeholder interrupted again. "Right, but I'm asking who created the initial structure and learning flow, and who sourced the module content before you refined it." There was a long silence. Then I unmuted. "I can speak to that if you'd like." And just like that, the whole tone of the meeting shifted. I walked them through the entire timeline, from the brainstorming sessions to the content audits, through the testing rounds and feedback summaries. I didn't talk over anyone. I didn't throw shade. I didn't even look at her screen while I talked. I just calmly explained how the entire project had taken shape and backed it with references and files that matched exactly what the execs were looking at. When I finished, the stakeholder thanked me and asked if I could follow up with my documentation after the call. I said I'd be happy to. The associate director? She didn't say another word for the rest of the meeting. The fallout started quietly. Over the next few days, her tone changed. No more micromanagement. No passive-aggressive strategy check-ins. She stopped commenting on shared documents entirely. I later found out she had been pulled into a closed-door meeting with senior leadership. Word got around that her role expectations were being reviewed. She stayed on for a few more weeks, but the damage was done. When she left, there was no all-staff email. No farewell message. Just a calendar update marking her departure, and silence. What she tried to steal wasn't just credit. It was trust. And that's something you can't fake. After that fateful review meeting, things didn't snap back into place overnight. The damage she'd caused left a ripple across the team. People were tense, cautious. A few team members messaged me privately to say they were sorry they hadn't stepped in earlier, that they'd noticed what was happening but didn't know how to help. I didn't hold it against them. I'd seen how quickly someone could get isolated in a power grab like that. But something had shifted, permanently. I started getting invited to the meetings she used to run. At first it was subtle. A manager would add me to a project planning session, just in case I had insight. Then I was asked to lead the presentation for our next training initiative. Later, one of the department heads called me directly and said, "We really appreciate how you handled the last project. We'd like your input from the beginning on this next one." There was no grand apology, no parade, no awkward HR meeting. Just a clear shift in how I was being treated. My contributions were visible now, and not because I demanded it, but because I let the work speak, with proof to back it up. Even the way my name appeared in emails changed. It moved from being listed in the CC line, or buried in a shout-out, to being the one addressed directly. One team lead referred to me as the glue that kept the whole operation on track, which, if I'm honest, felt better than any title upgrade. And while no one ever said outright what had happened behind the scenes with the associate director, I didn't need them to. Her exit had been the result of her own arrogance. She tried to take control without doing the work, and when asked to explain the process, she collapsed under the weight of her own lies. I hadn't sabotaged her. I hadn't plotted her downfall. I had simply prepared for the day someone asked the right question, and I'd been ready with the truth. The department moved forward without her. The onboarding system we built continued to roll out and eventually got picked up by other branches in the company. It became the new standard, and parts of it were even used as a training example for new hires. Every time I saw a manager reference a feature I had built or cite a slide I had created, it reminded me why I stayed calm through the chaos. I could have snapped. I could have walked out. But I wanted the truth to win, not just for me, but for the work itself. There's something deeply satisfying about building something good, watching someone try to steal it, and then seeing it outlast them. Not because you destroyed them, but because you didn't let them destroy you. Months passed, and the company began to settle into a new rhythm. The chaos left behind by the associate director slowly faded, but the lessons stuck around. My teammates no longer took systems or structure for granted. We talked more openly in meetings. People shared credit more deliberately. There was a sense of mutual protection that hadn't existed before, like we'd all witnessed how easily things could go wrong if no one spoke up. And me. I didn't walk around with a chip on my shoulder or carry some need to prove a point anymore. I didn't need to. The work had spoken, and it was still speaking. The project that started it all, our new training module, became the model for several other initiatives across the organization. Other teams began asking how we pulled it off, how we managed feedback so effectively, how we balanced clarity with creativity. They weren't asking her. They were asking me. That was the real victory. Not her removal. Not the awkward silence that followed her exit. But the quiet, undeniable fact that I had built something valuable. And when someone tried to hijack it for their own gain, they failed, and I didn't have to stoop to their level to make it happen. One afternoon, a new hire asked me if I'd ever had to deal with difficult leadership interference. I almost laughed. I thought about telling the full story, but I didn't. Instead, I just said, "Documentation is your best friend," and moved on. I didn't need to turn the experience into a cautionary tale for everyone else. The system had already been adjusted. Guardrails were quietly put in place to ensure no one could do what she did again, at least, not easily. What I learned from it all was this. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the most effective revenge is just surviving their worst, outlasting their games, and letting them self-destruct while you keep building. It's continuing to do the job better than they ever could. It's being remembered long after they've been quietly erased. Eventually, the company moved on from the incident completely. Her name never came up again. She became one of those unspoken footnotes people refer to vaguely when talking about when things were rocky. But I remembered. I remembered how close she came to ruining something I had put my heart into. I remembered how easily lies can be sold in a corporate setting when no one checks the receipts. And I remembered how powerful it is to have the truth on your side, even if it takes a little time for it to surface. I never wanted to become the kind of person who played politics or manipulated people for personal gain. I still don't. But I did become the kind of person who's ready for it when others try. Not out of spite. Out of self-respect. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't what you do to someone, it's what you refuse to let them do to you.